Hello, my name is Roberto Delmanto Jr. I'm a criminal lawyer in Brazil for already 31 years. I graduated in 1991 from the University of São Paulo, where I got my PhD, criminal procedure. I have books written, commentaries on the penal code, and so on. But I'd like to connect. I'd like to talk to everybody. And that's why I accept this initiative to address you an issue involving the Brazilian criminal system. White-collar crimes. The impunity in Brazil is a myth or a reality? Members of the political, financial, or educational elite who eventually commit a crime, do they face criminal procedures in Brazil? Do they get convicted? Do they really go to jail or not? Brazil is a rich country. We have 280 million people. We export goods all over the world. We are a brick, soybeans, beef, pork, meat, chicken, iron, petrol. We have huge agribusiness industry and so on, but we have a social gap that demands changing. It is terrible, like a brick. We have problems with education for the poor. We have problems with sewage, with water treatment, conserving and preserving the Amazon and other forests and other biomes, housing problems, in summing up health issues, but we have excellent initiatives on public health system. We are a model to the world. Of course, it needs a lot of improvement, but we provide basic health treatment for all the population for free. But it needs improvement for sure, but it exists and it reasonably works. What happens that due to criminality, we have a chaos regarding drug trafficking and all the organized crime that comes with it, and they drift the youth out of schools to the crime. This is terrible. This is a fight that never ends. But this is a problem because most of these people in jail, or of small drug dealers. This is a situation that enhances even more violence in my point of view, because we have 920,000 people behind bars, and 500,000 people are already judged. All the appeals is definitive, and 419,000 still being prosecuted under bars by provisional imprisonments, like afraid of fleeing away or menacing witnesses of the gravity of the seriousness of the crime. This is a very delicate thing here of this provisional imprisonments. But 30% of this population is for trafficking drugs, and 20%, 25% robbery, 13% larceny, and 10% homicide. There's a gap here because it's very difficult to find out the perpetrators of homicide without witnesses. This is a problem. But these numbers leads to a false conclusion. But what about financial crimes? What about the crimes committed by the elite, the white-collar crimes? What about them? Are they the perpetrators going to jail, or only the population more vulnerable are getting into bars? Of course, the number of people involved in white-collar crimes, the financial market, the business market, it is a smaller percentage of the population who don't have access to this realm. So it explains. But what I want to show, bringing examples, that people from the elite are really being punished in Brazil. So this is a myth that they don't get prosecuted, they don't get sentenced, and they don't go behind bars. Even having committed non-violent crimes. And one example is very dramatic, but must be said that a lot of people from the higher extracts of our society have been charged for sexual abuse of minors. So separate couples, the wife accuses the ex-husband, or the ex-husband accuses the actual companion of his ex-wife of abusing a daughter or son. So it's been a lot of accusation of sex abuse of minors, and most solely in the word of the children. So in Brazil, all sexual intentional contact, but the touch, a slight touch in the sexual areas, is already considered a rape, even though without sexual intercourse. The rape in Brazil for people under 14 years old is any touch. Any touch is a rape. So people, even from the high elite of the society, have been convicted to 12 years, 15 years imprisonment for sex abuse of minors, even without intercourse. And a famous case, an Olympic coach was recently sentenced to 102 years of imprisonment, charged of being touching in the sexual parts, no sexual intercourse, touching of sexual parts of the athletes under 14 during the training in open gyms where the parents could watch if they were there. But the court considered all these contradictions and sentenced him for 102 years of imprisonment. No sexual intercourse. So, and he was an Olympic coach, similar to the case of the United States. One other example, medical doctors. One wealthy man, he was old, and he had his wife, also old, and he was very concerned because he was going to die first because of his state of health. And he didn't have sons, only nephews. And when the two doctors went to take care of him, he was very concerned about his wife. And he got very attached to the doctors. And he decided to change his will and transforming into beneficiaries the doctors and excluding the nephews. And he was confident that the doctors, after he passed away, would take care of his wife. And he said that he didn't trust the nephews. That's why he changed his will. And we have experts demonstrating that he was in his plain sanity when he made it before a public notary. But the court didn't consider that, so thought it was outrageous to a doctor become a beneficiary of the will of his patient, and they were convicted to 7 years imprisonment, and for this accused of having brainwashed the old man and so on. So this is one case of punishment of the elite. But getting properly to white-collar crimes, let's think about public financing of... there's a law in Brazil called Rouanet law. It says that to promote cultural events, a company can deduce part of their taxes when they contract shows or cultural presentations and so on, sponsor film shootings and so. So they have it deduced. And the two brothers, they were agents who connect the international companies, big companies, the government, and the artists, and said, let's make a show. They had their marginal profit for the management of that. But what is said, that when they had to make all the accountant to the government saying what they expend, the government said that it was not okay and questioned the expenses, saying that the brothers used part of the money for themselves, saying that they contracted a band for their wedding with this money, and also the companies for having promoted themselves, not only shows for the poor. The companies paid the tax and they got out of it. And the two entrepreneurs got 10 years of jail because of that. And they were high-class society going to jail. A second example, bank fraud. A manager of a bank, she was accused of making withdrawals, small withdrawals of $100 each. 194 small withdrawals, that was $19,400, from 27 clients who thought their accounts were closed. The accusation said that when the client went to the bank agency and said, look, I want to close my account, she went to the ATM with them to withdraw the balance, to make it zero, to close the account. They claimed that she pretended to destroy the card, and when she went to the ATM, she took notice of the password, and then after changing the mailing address of the client thought the account was closed, and she made these small withdrawals with the credit granted by the bank as a loan. And she got, for that, 10 years of prison. Another case, tax evasion frauds. Okay. When you get a fiscalization of tax authorities, it's usually, if they found out that there's been fraud, that you didn't declare some amounts, you get automatically 120% fine, plus corrections, plus interest. So after 1 or 2 or 3 years, you get this fiscalization. For example, if you didn't pay $100,000 in taxes, it becomes easily $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. It multiplicates. And if you get a criminal charge, usually the convictions for the average are about 4 years imprisonment, substituted by public service and heavy fines. Very heavy fines, plus having to pay the tax and all the fines. But for crimes more relevant, we already had one very socialite woman that ran a department store called Daslu in Brazil. She was sentenced to 100 years of prison for tax fraud in imports. She died of cancer before having her appeal judged. And there's one last example, hospital administrators. There's a hospital created by a religious institution, non-profit one, and that gives treatment to poor people. And the Brazilian government pays for that. But of course, all this payment doesn't cover the costs. It's always deficitary. And this hospital looked for another fund of financial sourcing. And they created a private health plan, used the same facilities for the ones who would pay for a treatment instead of only the poor population. The hospital went into chaos. The city council declared emergency and started to administrate this private hospital. There's a law here that allows that for 2 years emergency. The government will take care of that. You are out. But the two administrators, they were also administrators of the private health plan, because it was all the same. And they had to put people in other hospitals, but the bills went to the hospital and not to the plan, the health plan. But they used to reimburse it. But once they didn't reimburse, they were charged of embezzlement, and they were convicted to 8 years in prison plus $200,000 fine each. And so they were volunteers. They didn't have nothing to do with getting any profit. They only tried to keep the private health plan, and they got a very severe sentence. And just to finish, in tax fraud, to conclude, if you have the money to pay all the amount of the fines, the so-called, I said, $600,000, $700,000, even after the conviction, you get rid of it. The crime is extinguished. And if you don't have the money, you have to serve jail. So this has an ethical questioning, because if you have money, you committed a crime, but you get rid of it. And if you don't have, you're a businessman, you got in trouble, you didn't pay your taxes, but you are convicted, you have to serve jail if your conviction is over 4 years of imprisonment. Thank you very much. I hope in these 15 minutes I could explain and show a little bit of Brazilian reality, demonstrating that it is a myth we have impunity for the elite in Brazil, for the white-collar crime. It is not a reality. We have it. It is happening, as I could show in those examples. Thank you very much.